You mentioned the USMCA. Can you explain why you don't think, one, that Pelosi understands the deal, and two, why doesn't your administration send that text to Pelosi and force her hand and start the clock?
Well, they're being very nice to her because they really, she's a mess. Look, let's face it, she doesn't understand it. And they sort of feel she's disintegrating before the rush. She does not understand it. They want to have her understand it before it's finished. It's signed. As you know, Mexico's approved the deal. Canada's approved the deal. And they're waiting to get a signal for her. Now, I would say this, the farmers should start talking to the Democrats in the House. The Senate's ready to approve it, the Republican Senate, but the Democrat House is not. Pelosi does not understand the bill. She doesn't understand it. Even though unions are in favor of it, farmers, everybody just about is in favor of it. It's a replacement for, as I said, the worst trade deal ever made. So she's got to get up to snuff, learn the bill. And by the way, I think she wants to approve it. I think. But so Bob Lighthizer, who you can speak to if you want, he's waiting to get the okay from her to send it in. But we're at a point where we're just going to have to send it in. It's all ready.
How long will you wait, sir?
Well, he said she'd like to have 2 weeks to get to know the bill. I think that's a long time. I think it's a do-nothing Congress. The Democrats have done nothing in the House. They've done absolutely nothing. They don't get it. I mean, other than investigate. They want to, let's investigate. After the Mueller report came out, no collusion, no obstruction, no nothing. Let's start it all over again. They weren't too happy, so they want to just keep it going. And what that does is it takes up tremendous time and energy, and they've done absolutely, I mean, it's just been it's been very bad. So if they don't get the USMCA, that would be very sad. Jeff?
Speaker Pelosi said today she hoped your family would conduct an intervention with you. What's your reaction to that?
No, I saw her read it perfectly, just the way she said it. It's very, very sort of a nasty type statement, but I will say this. She said I walked into the room right next door yesterday and walked in and started screaming and yelling, just the opposite, just the opposite. Because I know that they will always say that, even if it didn't happen, because this happened once before. I walked out, I was so calm. You all saw me minutes later. I was at a news conference. I was extremely calm. I was probably even more so in that room. So I walked into the cabinet room. You had the group, Crying Chuck, Crazy Nancy. I tell you what, I've been watching her, and I have been watching her for a long period of time. She's not the same person. She's lost it. Now, as far as the group is concerned, where is Sarah, Kellyanne? Where are you? Come here a minute. You were in that room. Kellyanne? You were in the room. Sarah was in the room. Mercedes was in the room yesterday. So I just want to let you know, every time I go into a room, if there aren't cameras, they come out and say, oh, he was yelling, he was screaming. Kellyanne, what was my temperament yesterday?
Very calm, no temper tantrum. I told the Facts First crowd as they published that you were fuming, temper tantrum, rage, lost it, that's just a lie because everyone was after somebody who has no tape. But you were very calm, stood at the end of the
They have it on tape someplace? Good.
Cabinet, you stood at the end of the table, stated your case.
Peter doesn't want to hear this, by the way. He wants to ask
the headlines are written there.
because he doesn't. He's fake news. But go ahead.
Sir, Mr. President, why would you have to raise your voice? You said to them, when you're done, your 2 tracks, come back and we'll talk about infrastructure. You've made that very clear.
We had the meeting,
infrastructure, drug pricing, USMCA. You've made that very clear to them.
And I just don't know what she's going to do with USMCA. It's going to be one of the great trade deals of all time. And frankly, if we didn't have tariffs, we would never have a deal like this. Because when Mexico said they're not going to agree to certain points, I said, that's okay, we're just going to tariff your nation. We're going to tariff you. Either you're going to agree or not. It's a great deal. In fact, you know, your friends on the other side of the border, they started striking and picketing. So that's usually not a good sign for the other side, right? We made a great deal. But whether or not Pelosi understands it or whether I don't think she's capable right now of understanding it. I think she's got a lot of problems. Mercedes, you were in the room yesterday. I walked in, and I would say in this voice, I said, not right what you did, and calling a meeting like this wasn't right. And so I said, so I'm going to postpone it or call it off. But you can focus on one thing. You shouldn't go down 2 tracks at the same time because they can't. They're so the whole Democrat Party is very messed up. They have never recovered from the great election of 2016, an election that I think you folks liked very much, right? Well, Nancy Pelosi was not happy about it, and she is a mess. Let me ask you this. Mercedes, you're always a straight talker. You were in that room yesterday?
Yes, sir.
What was my attitude when I walked in? Did I ever scream?
No, you were very calm and you were very direct. And you sent a very firm message to the Speaker and to the Democrats. And it's very discouraging and disgraceful to see that the Speaker would decide an hour before coming to the White House to make those comments, call it that there's a cover-up, and then stride into the White House and expect there to be a constructive meeting. You know, we want to solve these big issues of infrastructure. We want to solve these big issues of USMCA. You yourself have tried time and time again to negotiate and work with them on issues like border security, which they call a manufactured crisis. And it's time for them to wake up and to stop waging this political war and these endless investigations and start to really find the solutions that the American people are looking for, that our farmers are looking for.
Right. And I think it's going to be very hard for Nancy Pelosi to stop that. Now, they're a do-nothing group of people. The Democrats have done nothing other than obstruct. They're obstructing this country, but they are obstructing. And it'll be very interesting to see whether or not they approve the USMCA, which we need. Is Sarah there? Sarah?
Larry was called out, Mr.
Larry
President.
Larry's there.
Larry, were you at the meeting?
Yes, sir.
Oh, fantastic. The great Larry Kudlow. Could you come here, please? You're not afraid of television, I know.
We're going to take care of
I think
Larry.
he's done more live television. Maybe Regis has you by a little bit, right? Not by much. Larry, you were at the meeting yesterday, right? So they have this narrative that they want to put out, because I saw Crying Chuck yesterday, and he went out and he said he was stomping and he was this and that. And Larry, you were there. There were many people there, by the way, many people. We can get you 20 other people to say this. What was my attitude yesterday at the meeting?
Mercy's right. Kellyanne's right. You were very calm, and you laid out the case. You had a lot of numbers of what you've contributed in terms of paperwork and witnesses and so forth. While you were there, they didn't say anything. Speaker didn't say anything, and you left. You made your case. Back to
Well, it
work.
was very calm, very.
Much calmer than some of our
I would
trade
say
meetings.
I was saying calm like I was at the news conference minutes ago.
Mr.
Minutes
President,
later.
I wanted to say one more thing. When the 12 Democrats were here on April 30th for the first meeting, they went out to the sticks and addressed the press. And I think you should go back and play Speaker Pelosi's comments from that day, because she made very clear that it was a productive, constructive move toward infrastructure. And some of you asked her, how will you investigate him and work on infrastructure? And she said, we didn't talk about investigations. We're here to talk about infrastructure. So that changed yesterday, an hour before she came here.
And there's really, if you look at it, hi Sarah, we're just talking about the meeting. You were there yesterday? Yes. Were you? Yes. Just come forward. Does anybody know Sarah? How come Sarah? Sarah, we're just talking about the meeting yesterday. The narrative was I was screaming and ranting and raving, and it was terrible. I watched Nancy, and she was all crazy yesterday. She put the hands and everything. She reminded me of Beto. She actually reminded me of Beto, maybe a little bit worse. But just out of curiosity, you were there. What was my tone yesterday at the meeting?
Very calm. I've seen both, and this was definitely not angry or ranting. Very calm and straightforward and clear. That we have to actually get to work and do good things for the American people, and it's going to be impossible to do that if we're spending all of our time fighting. So,
Couldn't have been more calm. I respectfully say sorry to inconvenience you, and I left the room. I then went directly to the press conference, right? The reason I asked them to say, because this happened to me once before with the same group, Crying Chuck. I don't want to say Crazy Nancy, because if I say that, you're going to say it's a copy of Crazy Bernie, and that's no good, because Bernie is definitely crazy. But I did it because we had this instance at least once before where I was very, very calm on another occasion, and they walked out to the sticks, and they said it was horrible. He was ranting. He was raving. He was pounding the table. The reason I didn't do that is because I didn't want them to say I would do that, but they said it anyway. And so I thought they may say it again. So I'm very glad that you all saw. Were you there, Hogan? You know about it.
But I've seen the first one, Mr. President, and that accusation that you pounded your fist, and I'll be honest, you have every right to do that. We face a crisis on our southern border, and they've done nothing They have not worked with you. All they've done is mocked and derided you. In fact, calling us liars, calling you a liar for calling out exactly what's happening at the southern border. You laid it out the case of them. They refused to work with you then, and they're refusing to work with you now.
These are bad people. You know, a lot of people say deep state. I don't say deep state. We have a lot of bad people, and I think they're being found out. I think right now, I saw where Comey is blaming this one, and Brennan's blaming another one, and they're going against each other, and Clapper, I think yesterday, maybe is blaming President Obama. Oh, so surprised to see that happening. Got a lot of bad people. You got a lot of bad people, and it's a shame. But I said to everybody before I walked in, I said, I'm going to be very calm because I don't want them going out to the press and saying that I was anything but calm. So I was extremely calm, very much like I am right now. And it was sad when I watched Nancy all moving, the movement and the hands and the craziness. And I watched it. That's, by the way, a person that's got some problems. But when I watched that this morning, then I went over to Arlington National Cemetery for a very beautiful moment with the First Lady. But I watched that this morning, and that's just a narrative they want to put out. And I think it's pretty sad when they have to play that kind of narrative. I think it's a very sad thing for our country. Yes, Peter?
Mr. President, a couple questions I want to ask you about the disaster aid bill and about John Walker Lynn. But first, just to confirm some